Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Chris Rodell, author, motivational speaker, and humorist. Chris has a number of books out. We've talked in the first part of the show about one of them, but we're going to talk about that one a little bit more. Then we're going to get into the latest one. You've sort of already answered this with the crayons book, but when it comes to messaging, we have to understand both our why, our reason for being, and our customers' why, their reason for buying. We then need to crystallize that into one big idea, one memorable message or theme that makes an emotional impact on our target audiences. So you might have already touched on this with the crayons book, but think about that. Whether it's for you personally or one of your books or all of your books, what's your big idea?
I think for me, the thing that goes back to the book, I wrote it as a humor book, and it's about overcoming difficulties. When I was about 45, I had failed at mostly everything I'd wanted to do. I didn't have stability. I didn't have country clubs or a nice car or anything like that. And I saw my friends that had these things, but a lot of them were going through divorce, estrangement, addiction. And I thought, why am I happy and they're not? You know, and they have all the material things that I want. So I started to write a list of it. That's what the crayons book became. And it also went back to when my daughter was about 4, they were going around the table saying, "What does your daddy do?" And the one said, "My daddy's a doctor," and she was very proud. The other said, "My daddy fixes cars," and she was very proud. And the other said, "My daddy builds homes," and she was very proud. They got to my daughter, and she said, "He plays with me." And I thought, man, that is not going to look good on the loan applications. But I think I sign every one of those crayons book this way, and I think this answers your questions, because we see these people that look so put together and so well, and you look at people walking down the street and they think, that person has it all. A lot of these people don't. They're a mess just like you and I, you know? And I sign every one of those books the same way, and this is the universal message for people, and I think it really resonates with people. I sign them, never forget for even a single instant how many happy colors your life is adding to the lives of those you love, and remember, together we can all brighten the whole world. And that's true. I think that's a message people want to hear. This book was rejected by every major publisher, and one publisher said, "We think it's funny, we think it's insightful, but how are we going to sell a self-help book by a guy who seems incapable of ever even helping himself?" So I self-published it.
Well, first of all, that was rude.
It was very clever, though.
And self-publishing today is now as good, if not better,
I think so,
than the publishers. Give me an excerpt from it. You've told us the big idea about the crayons book. I love it. I needed that today. Suze will attest to that. Give me an excerpt or two so people can understand it, because on the show notes, we're going to have how they can get the book, and we want them to hear a little bit about it now.
Well, it's like it has, in the talks I give, it's about how to live your life more colorfully and more soulfully. Like I have tips in there like, tell friends you're going to open an art gallery, invite them to a room with nothing on the walls, have them be greeted by 30 guys who say nothing but, "Hi, I'm Art." But so there's a lot of humor in it. It's mostly humor. I say my motivational talks are 77% humor, 22% humanity, and about 1% motivation. Because I think that's all the motivation people need these days. I think people are motivated out the ass right now. So I think people need to realize how tough it is for everyone else. So I have things in there like number 498, enjoy being human and enjoy human beings. You know, be kind to yourself. And then I also ask other important questions like, where do we go when we die? How long, what happens when, you know, to our souls? And then questions like, if fans of the Grateful Dead are called deadheads, what does that make those of us who revere the book Moby Dick?
Clever stuff from Chris Rodell, author. What's the full title of the crayons book?
Use All the Crayons, The Colorful Guide to Simple Human Happiness.
So you do that book. You have a huge home run with 250 purchased books for a presentation to West Virginia. You have a great closing that's on YouTube and on our show notes. What else did you do with that? Did you hit like a speaking tour where you interviewed much? I know when I did get where you want to go, I ended up getting a number of TV show interviews, radio interviews, newspaper articles. Did you get that kind of stuff?
And I think the thing is that's helped me with self-publishing was like if it had been published by a traditional publisher, they would have let it ride for 6 months and then it would have gone away. Here, I'm still selling that book. It's 3 years old and I'm still selling it. I was invited to speak to the Reynoldsville Library in near Du Bois, and they're going to buy 80 copies of the book. as gifts. People are catching on. Like I spoke to the Pennsylvania Librarians Association. I spoke to the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, and they had a bunch of books. They bought some, but it's just getting the word out there. Like I had a guy, the greatest thing anyone's ever said to my speeches, they had a big wine dinner the night before, and he came up to me after my speech and he said, "Man, you cured my hangover." And he said, he goes, I didn't even want to be here. I thought the topic sounded stupid. He goes, but I had so much fun. You had everybody in this room feeling happy to be human. So it's the kind of thing, like, I didn't write that book to be a motivational speaker, but the reaction I got when I was talking to people at the libraries, I had a 98-year-old woman write me a letter, said it changed her life. She said she'd been living her life in all kinds of gray colors. She said, my book made her think differently. And it made me wish I'd have written it when I was actually writing with crayons for a 98-year-old woman. But it was the reaction has been great, and people love the Last Baby Boomer book, but that's not a book that I can go around and really talk about it the way I can the crayons book.
Well, let's talk about that. The Last Baby Boomer, The Story of the Ultimate Goal Pool by Chris Rodell. And this one's relatively recent. The other one was 3 years
2
ago.
months.
This one's 2 months.
Yeah.
Talk about the inspiration for this book that I have in my hand and tell us a little more about it.
Well, you're always looking for different projects and things to spur the mind. And I remember I was riding with my grandfather in Du Bois, and he was 85 at the time. And he was healthy and fit and great. And I said, "What are you doing today, Papa?" And he goes, "I'm going to bury another one of my best friends." And I said, "What's that like?" He goes, "It's terrible." He goes, "It's just no fun, it's no good." And I said, I said, "Are you afraid of dying?" And he pounded the steering wheel. I'll never forget that. He pounded the steering wheel. He said, "Hell no." He goes, "I pray every night it happens. I'm so sick of living." He goes, "I used to be able to piss over a boxcar. Now it dribbles down my leg." And 12 years later, he was still alive after praying every single night. And there were times we thought he would never die. And I thought, what would happen if that's me, if I'm in that situation when I'm praying to die? What would happen about the longevity, the curse of longevity? And at the time, every 5 years you see these stories about baby boomers are turning 50, the first baby boomer, the last baby boomer. And I thought, what's going to happen to the last baby boomer? The premise is people are going to be so sick. The last baby boomer will be 115 years old in the year 2079. That's pretty factual. And I figure that people are going to be so sick of baby boomers by then, they're going to take the last one, put him in a museum suite, charge $25 to be with him for 15 minutes. If you're in the room when he dies, you win the jackpot.
It's a great premise.
But he keeps living and living, and the jackpot keeps growing and growing. And I say it's a coming of old age story because everyone has to die, but only one of us gets to die last. That premise hooks people right away.
And it's just really interesting because we both have kind of done the same thing. Your first book is totally positive and upbeat, and your second book is kind of the opposite. I have the same thing. My first book was Get Where You Want to Go, How to Achieve Personal and Professional Growth Through Marketing, Selling, and Storytelling. And my third book is going to be Don't Be a Bullshit Marketer. So you did the same thing.
Yeah, it's true.
Interesting. This book, you got it to Suzanne and I about a week ago, so I've read some of it, and folks, it's captivating. It walks through what he just described, and it's comical as a premise, but yet you have to watch because then I started thinking about it and doing what you're doing, I have a grandmother who's 95, and she's still really awesome, but you can tell the onset of dementia is coming. And so it just hits you. It hits you a lot of different ways.
Our lives have all those darknesses in it. Like the grandfather I was talking about, he was sitting there one day and he was 97, and he goes, if it wasn't such a shame on the family, and he made a slashing motion with his finger over his wrist. And my mother said, I wouldn't be ashamed because they were living together, and that's the dark humor in our family. And 2 weeks later, he got up under his own power and went into the bathroom, and with something sharper than a finger, he made a slashing motion over his wrist. And he survived it. He survived that horrific ordeal, which horrified him. He was mortally upset that he couldn't kill himself. Now, I remember this is a story I always tell, too, in my talks about how our lives have these dark colors in them. I said, so we had this terrible day, but at some point, you're human beings. You get hungry. You need to eat. So he's we took him to the hospital, the emergency room. They couldn't fix him up because he had a living will. He's laying there in the bed, and my mom says, I'm hungry. Go get some sushi. So I go get some sushi. And we're sitting there, and my grandfather's a butcher from Du Bois, living with my mom in the South Hills. And he's sitting there, and he goes, "What is that you're eating?" I said, "It's sushi." And he said, "Let me try a bite of that." Now, I don't know what I was expecting, but it seemed like an electric moment. I don't know whether I thought he would jump out of the bed and say, "Thank God I'm alive, this sushi's wonderful." But I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "I wouldn't hit a dog in the ass with this."
It's the No BS show that's taken some turns, and we might need another shot of tequila. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. I'm with Chris Rodell, author, motivational speaker, humorist, a number of books. His latest is The Last Baby Boomer, the story of the ultimate goal pool. Pick a tool or tip, Chris, that you'd offer that will help our audience tell their story, craft their message, or communicate to internal and external target audiences.
I would say I've thought about that too, and I really think the answer for me has been just persistence. Like, I've had people say, "This isn't going to be good, you can't sell it." I don't believe it. If you have a product you believe in, that basically the product is myself and the books, and I've never given up. There's some dark times still, that I really have struggles, and money's really evasive. Paying to publish your own book seems like a defeat still, but I don't doubt, when I hear that man tell me that I cured his hangover at the talk, and I hear these people come up to me and say that, I can't believe they're wrong. And I have people that love this book and they love the crayons book. I just believe someday it's going to happen. So that's it. I think the lesson for anything you care about doing is persistence, but also cheerful persistence. You can persist grimly, and that'll eat your life away too, because we're all subjected to rejection and failure. That's just part of the game. But if you can persevere cheerfully through every obstacle, that's really the key to life. Because I've had so many failures and setbacks these years, but I've also had a lot of fun during that time. I'd never surrendered to cynicism or despair. I walk out. I've said jokingly that I wake up every single morning convinced something great is going to happen to me that day, and I've been wrong every single morning since 1992.
I can handle the persevere, but I don't persevere cheerily.
Let's have another shot.
Cheerfully. And you kind of quoted the esteemed lyricist Corey Hart, "Never surrender." And there was sarcasm there with Corey Hart as an esteemed lyricist. Here's my feeling on it, Chris, with the creatives, being a creative, you and I, and Suzanne as well. When you're doing what we do, it can suck really bad when you write something or produce something and you're not sure about the response. But then you get that one person that gets it or gets you, and that juices you.
It does. It can carry you a long way, can't it?
I will get
a light in the eyes.
I got emails last week when we did light reading. I did the song "No Scrubs" by TLC, and I took the song just to be funny. And I got so many responses to that that it juiced me, because prior to that, you write a column blog post and you don't hear anything. You don't hear anything. You don't hear anything. You write a book, and even your mom admits she didn't read it for the first 3 months. The mom I thanked during the Cut the Bullshit rant in the first episode of this show with Chris. And so you're doing stuff that you don't know who's reading it.
Yeah.
You don't know who's getting it. Talk about that, because you go both ends of the spectrum.
Well, I've had my daughter, the youngest one is now 9, and she said, "What are you doing today, Daddy?" I said, "I'm going to sit in a small, quiet room all by myself and scream for attention." And that's what writing is. You're sitting there all by yourself, screaming for attention. I write the blog 8 Days to Amish. I write that 3 or 4 days a week.
Great blog, by the way.
Thank you.
It'll be on the show notes.
Yeah,
there's some stuff that we're going to use on the bullseye from that blog. But go ahead.
But I have people say to me, you wonder, are you wasting your time? And I've had people come up to me and they say, if I'm having a really bad day, I go to your blog. How is that be a waste of your time if you're helping one person like that? And then I had these guys come out from Pittsburgh that I know last week. They came to the Tin Lizzy. My office is above the Tin Lizzy in Youngstown, Latrobe area. And they said,
"You mean Youngwood?"
No, it's Youngstown.
There's Youngstown.
Yeah, Youngstown.
But there is a Youngwood right
Youngwood, yeah. Youngstown is a one stoplight town right down the street from Latrobe Country Club.
And then Youngwood is...
That's about
nearby.
15 miles away.
Okay.
Near
to
Greensburg, yeah.
Okay.
But I had these guys come out, and I'd met the one guy. He's a bartender at Nadine's, a good friend of mine. And they said, "We just wanted to come out and see your place. We heard you've been writing about it. Can you come down?" I said, "I'll stop whatever I'm doing to drink with my friends." So I did. And the one guy gave me $20. He said, "I just enjoy your blog so much." And he bought me drinks all night. So it does pay off.
Yes.
Not in a way that buys groceries, but keeps me inebriated.
I get what you're saying, because I remember I spoke one place and we had one of those smart readers, whatever they are, 5 or 6 years ago, came out and you could use it as a credit card. Might even be longer. And this was right after I had done Get Where You Want to Go, and I was selling books at the back of the room after I spoke, and 4 or 5 people bought books, and then that thing broke.
Yeah.
And this one woman comes up and she just hands me $30 in cash. Another guy comes up and hands me $20 in cash. Another one $25.
Yeah.
I remember I came home and I called Darlene driving home. I'm going, I have like $100 in my pocket. This is the greatest day ever.
I know that feeling. I've had when I do one of those cash things. I was at the that's all right. I was at the Wheeling Library last year. They had me in to talk, and it went really well. And I walked out of there with like $400, and it's like you robbed a bank. You know, you have that bag full of cash, and people come up and say nice things to you, and you just feel great.
Yes.
And you think, how can I do one of these every single day?
I know. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could? We're with Chris Rodell, an author, motivational speaker, humorist. He's got a number of books, and it's time for him to keep calm and hit the bullseye. Chris, I'll ask you to choose between 2 marketing or messaging classics. You tell me which one you like more, but you only have a few seconds to choose. Tell us why, and hopefully hit the bullseye. We're going to try to incorporate at least one element from your blog.
Okay.
First one, Geico's Gecko or the Aflac Duck?
Gecko.
And why?
I think it's catchier name, the duck, and I'm not a fan of Gilbert's.
Okay. Reach out and touch someone, or Can You Hear Me Now?
Both equally annoying, but more effective was Can You Hear Me Now?
Equally annoying.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
The one is cloying. The one is just it's an earworm. You know, Can you hear me now? And it's one of those lines like, I hate myself when I start saying, going up to friends, what's in your wallet, and think I'm being funny, but I just find it irresistible sometimes.
Mm-hmm. You know what? We have to add that one.
We're
gonna add that one. Good one. Finger licking good or think outside the bun?
Finger licking good I like a lot.
It stood the test of time.
Yeah, and the new, I'm still mystified why they have 3 different actors portraying Colonel Sanders, and there's got to be some reason for that. Because they had Norm Macdonald, and then they had Daryl Hammond, and I think they've got a 3rd guy now. I think eventually we'll all get our shot at being Colonel Sanders. I have some Colonel Sanders trivia, too. Did you know he was an excellent golfer?
I did not.
Yeah. And they said that you would see him down there. It was like golfing with a Keebler elf. Because you see one of these guys that come to life, but he was an outstanding golfer.
I thought he might be losing his time.
It's hit the bullseye. We try to get messaging leaders or messaging campaigns, shows, anything tied to marketing or messaging. Jeff Bezos or Tim Cook?
I'd have to say Tim Cook, although, and I'm an Apple guy, but I find their genius repressive. You know, I think they trivialize their legacy with the watch. I don't think that makes any sense. If you have a watch that you give to your grandchild, or your grandfather gives you a watch, that's something you treasure. No one's ever going to say, here, take my Apple Watch. And I resent that they keep making us buy new products every 6 months. They got one that makes our one that we have in our pocket obsolete. I wish they would take 1 year and just devote it to solving one major problem. If they're truly geniuses, and I believe they are, they could wipe out the internal combustion engine in 1 year. And I wish they would do that, but they make great products. I just bought a new laptop the other day and didn't even think of anything else. I got a MacBook Air.
Darren works in the front. He's concierge here at Gateway Towers. Good man, talks to us quite a bit at Mass Solutions. Yesterday, we had a number of people coming in and out, and he was helping get people through. And when I came out to talk to him, I noticed he turned and looked at his Apple Watch and hit a button. And this is the epitome of what you just said. I said, Apple Watch, what do you think of that? And he goes, oh, it's stupid. And Jeff Bezos of Amazon is the other one. You chose Cook over him.
Yeah.
Started out with the idea of an online bookstore, but had the big idea to take it a step further.
Yeah.
Now he's incorporating drones big time.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It is.
He's got, he made the attempt with the Kindle and Kindle Fire. The Kindle worked, Kindle Fire not so much. The marketing that his team does to remarket to us anytime we look at something, to come back and have other ideas about that to compare. And their pricing model is amazing how they get us. They actually change the pricing based on us.
Yeah.
And it's, read that story. We'll have to find that one. I think it's on Wall Street Journal. The entire research report on them was how they actually price based on the individual. So you think something's $4.99, it's $4.99 for you. It might be $4.29 for someone else based on their habits and how they buy.
I still prefer, and I took Cook over Bezos because I love still the small town bookstore. And I don't want to see that ever go away. I didn't like it when the video stores went away, and I treasure it when somebody buys a book from me, a hard copy book that I can actually sign for them. And I like the idea of people going and browsing and finding my book. So I support the small independents, and
I'm schizophrenic on this one.
I know what you mean.
Here's the deal. When I got the first generation Kindle, I went from reading 10 to 12 books a year to reading 35 the first or second year.
Yeah.
But I also still am like a nerdy little kid. When I would go into a bookstore throughout my life, I would get excited.
Oh, I love that feeling. Or a library. I just love that feeling going into a place like that and browsing.
So now everybody thinks we're complete dorks.
Where the world goes away. And Burgess Meredith is on the steps of the library, has all the time in the world and all the books, and then he steps on his glasses.
Yes. That's a great story to bring about his irony.
Yeah.
So when the Kindle came out, I loved it, and I still use it. I still probably read 10 to 12 books on there, and 2 or 3 handout ones. But I'm with you. There's something more powerful. I forget more when I read it on the Kindle.
Yeah.
Because you just don't have the tactile
How about
feeling.
This? What do you use for bookmarks?
In the Kindle?
Well, you don't have a bookmark in the Kindle, but what do you use for bookmarks like in a book you're reading, a hard copy?
My business card.
Okay, I have a real thing. I still have.
I don't even know why.
Made.
That's a great question. I don't know why. That's because I probably have 500
bookmark.
of them.
Yeah, it's a great memory thing. I have bookmarks made from the hairs of my daughter when they were kids. My daughter was just in the Little Mermaid out in Latrobe, and she was Scuttle, the seagull, and so I plucked one of her feathers off, and I used that for a bookmark. Concert tickets. I just love, I love, as much as I enjoy writing and carousing and those things, and family time, of course, but I really love, if I have an hour to sit down with a book and a good light above me and a fire, boy, is that a great time, and I love the whole experience of reading a book and feeling I'm smarter and getting more intelligent and learning something.
It does motivate you too.
Yeah.
Speaking of tickets and the we've gone so far with not having any of the nostalgic stuff and everything being electronic. When my sons play a game, and my oldest son, Alec, graduated high school, but he played both football and basketball, and my middle son plays basketball, I would go to the game and I would keep the stub and I'd write on the back of the date, and I'd write anything, 1 or 2 things that were memorable. It's so unaccustomed to giving you that back. We're going to the playoffs, and Brevin's team went real far in the Whitfield playoffs, then made the state playoffs. And I would go in and they would take that and rip it in half. And I'd go, can I have that half? And every single time they go, what?
I know.
And I go, can I just have it? And they were going to throw it away. And they're actually offended that I wanted it. And I would take it and then I'd go and I'd write something on it. But it's just humorous that they, the way the world is
how many,
gone.
do you have old tickets from old concerts?
Yes.
Old Stones shows. I have a Stones ticket from 81. I still use a bookmark.
I have a pizza box from a show, and Johnstown has that great Heritage Festival.
That is a wonderful time.
Okay, so
Flood City Music Festival.
So the Smithereens were coming, so I decided to be a sponsor.
Yeah.
So they give me seats right off to the side, front row, and everything. And I take Gerard Juice, who Suzanne knows, and they had food that I didn't like there. So I called Santos, which is my top pizza place, even better than Minio's and Fiore's, which my sons disagree with me. But I call Santos, and they're like, we can't deliver there. And they just know me as Maz from my DJing years. And I said, I need you to deliver this. I said, you'll get the biggest tip in the history of Santos. So they come, they deliver the pizza, and the 6 or 8 of us that were there watching the show eat the pizza. The show ends, and the lead singer of the Smithereens is now 300 pounds. And he comes over and asks for a piece of pizza. I said, yeah, but you got to sign the box. He signs the box, and I saved that box. And when Gerard Donahue turned 50, I came to his 50th birthday party, and I had that wrapped.
Great.
And he just went, Masty, that's hilarious. He's laughing so hard. So we have the box signed by the Smithereens.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
So yes, I keep stuff.
Yeah.
to your blog. It's 8 Days to Amish. What is it?
Yeah, 8 Days to Amish.
Okay.
My old office was above the Pond, which is a bar that had been there 65 years. Great family bar. And this was about 7 or 8 years ago. I was cherry picking the Wi-Fi off the guy next to me, and I said, look, I can give you $30 or we can both pay in rich Verizon. And this guy was a big stoner, and he said, I'll take the $30. So I gave him that. And then one day he came to, dude, I'm moving. I said, well, what's going to happen to my Wi-Fi? He goes, you're out of luck. And so I thought, man, I'm just going to have to go without. I couldn't afford Wi-Fi. And I thought, how many other writers are there or business people that don't have Wi-Fi in their office? And I thought, what's going to happen next? Will I lose electricity? Will I stop being able to afford all these other essentials? And then will I trade my kids for cattle, start churning my own butter? And I thought, my God, I'm only 8 days to Amish.
And that became the blog
That
post.
became the blog.
So
Yeah.
I go through his blog, Suzanne. I'm reading it, and I say, whoa, he just gave me a great bullseye. So here you go. Breaking Bad or The Sopranos?
Oh, I got to go with Breaking Bad just based on the ending.
Talk about it.
Well, it had one. The Sopranos, the more I think about it, was so great, and it was so groundbreaking. It led the way for all these great shows. There's so much great TV right now. It's amazing we get anything done. But Breaking Bad, the way it was filmed, it was so vivid. The characters were so great. I don't like Better Call Saul that much right now because it doesn't measure up to Breaking Bad. It's still good, but Breaking Bad, I could drop in at any time and watch over and over. I could do that with Sopranos too, but I could do that with Gilligan's Island too. I'm just that kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. Sopranos.
You take it.
Read that. I liked the rationale for that ending after reading it. Like, I can't say that I immediately got it, but I watched it so many times and then I started looking into it a little bit.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Well, we'll just have to disagree on that.
No, they're both great shows. we agree that they're both great shows. That's Chris Rodell on the No BS Marketing Show. This episode, Sights and Sounds of Marketing, is going to tie back to his book. His book is The Last Baby Boomer, the story of the ultimate ghoul pool. Great concept. Since he talked about the last baby boomer, we're going to talk all about how generations are labeled, whether it's fair or not, some accurate stereotypes, some not so accurate stereotypes, how the names came about, how they're marketed to. So let's start off very quickly with some of the easier, quick ones that we'll pound out. The greatest generation is anyone prior to 1928. Yeah. It was not named the greatest generation for the whole time that they were in existence until Tom Brokaw's book.
They were too humble to call themselves that. That's how great they were.
That's how great they were. And Tom Brokaw coined it, so obviously it had to be accurate. So the greatest generation was pre-1928. Then you had the silent generation, 1927 to 1945. The baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. I believe the greatest generation, Generation X, 1965 to 1981. They tried to call them Gen Y, and they said, the heck with that. They're the millennials, 1982 to 1999, and Gen Z, 2000 to 2017.
Calling one Gen Z, doesn't that mean that it's kind of puts a doorstop on it? There'll be no more after that? Gen ZA?
Z squared. So let's take the silent generation. When you think of that, so my parents would fit into that generation. They had a lot of their traditionalists as far as they were committed to their company. They tended to be dedicated. They were used to doing more with less, fiscally prudent, loyal to the organization, loyal to employers, duty, honor, country, patriotic, respectful of authority, strong work ethic. Followed by the boomers, who it's natural for a generation to fight what is there. So the boomers, ambitious, anti-establishment, challenged authority, believed in consensus leadership as opposed to authoritative leadership, idealistic. They lived to work. They're the most educated of the generations, even the latest generations. Rebellious against convention, beginning with their conservative parents. So the boomers. When you look at the Generation X, the name for Generation X came about after the boomers. They were called the busters. So Generation X was actually called baby busters. That didn't catch on. And what the marketing research kind of tells you after looking back on this is anytime you tried to name a generation based on the previous one, it didn't work. So Gen X going to Gen Y, now they became millennials. So Generation X, they were trying to figure out a way to name them because they were more anonymous than the boomers, and they used the name of Billy Idol's band, which was Generation X.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, so Billy Idol's band is what led to it. My favorite line about us, Suzanne, angry but don't know why. Anti-establishment as well, crave independence, focus on results, free agents. I often talk about when I first came out of school, they talked about how Generation X would have 7 jobs. Oh my heavens, how could that be? Everyone always used to only have 1, 2, at the most 3. So free agents, high degree of brand loyalty. Think about this. It's so true. Our degree of brand loyalty is higher than boomers and higher than millennials. Pragmatic, skeptical of institutions, unimpressed with authority, willing to take on responsibility, willing to put in the extra time to get a job done, work/life balance, work to live as opposed to live to work. Then the millennials, the thrashed generation unfairly, because each of these generations was thrashed. There's one from 1950 that talks about the silent generation, and it's in Time magazine. I went and researched it, and it's an article from 1950 that slams them. So every generation is slammed when they're 15 to 30 years old. The millennials are at ease in teams. This is the one that really struck me the past few years, is how millennials have been so much in the team focus from preschool on that they're much more able to work at teams than Gen X. Gen X were very used to, tell us what I got to do, let me go do it. You said, let me go off and write by myself. That's a Gen X. The millennials are great at working in teams. There's plus and minus. They then almost have a need to be working with teams. They're much more open to diversity because since preschool, they've been taught about multiculturalism, diversity. They're high-speed stimulus junkies. This one rings true for my kids. Invited as children to play a lead role in families' purchasing and travel decisions.
Yeah.
Here's how much input I had in our family's purchasing and travel decisions. None. We're on a vacation there. Shut up and get in the back. Respect is given for competency, not title. Millennials. Strong sense of entitlement, technologically savvy, the first digital generation. They think the mature generation is cool, though, and they want to please others. They hope to make life contributions to the world. They're very patriotic, shaped by 9/11.
Interesting.
So I'm going to shut up now. I've gone through 4 of them. Talk about what you've heard, what you think. Pick anything about the names of the generations, anything.
Well, I think the baby boomers beat them all because we have the best music. I think music ended effectively in 1990 when Tom Petty issued Free Falling, that album, and Full Moon Fever. And so if it goes on music, we've got them, everybody beat.
You had the monkeys.
The silent generation, I look back and I think, can you imagine any of our grandparents like struggling through a potato famine and taking a selfie? You know, things like that. Like our generation and the generations after us, everything's a selfie. You know, it's like they never had a bad time. And you think back on people and the hard times they've had, it's just different. But I like the buoyancy of this generation right now. I just spent a lot of time with my nephew. He's 22 years old, and he's just this great kid. And one of the things that interested me, he told me that they are turned off by a lot of technology. They see what it's doing to people and the relationships they have. So,
agreed.
Yeah. The greatest generation had what they did, though, was incredible. You know, to defeat the Depression and global tyranny was incredible. You got to give it to them. And we all know people like that, and they were just incredible people.
And then the silent generation grew up with that, though. The silent generation grew up with parents who had to live through the Depression. So the silent generation is very frugal. I look at my parents, and they're my heroes, and I admire them so much. They did enjoy life. They still do enjoy life.
Yeah.
And like my dad never bitches, and I bitch constantly, and I feel terrible about it. I want to change, and it's like that generation didn't. So silent was that they didn't bitch.
I wonder about, the baby boom generation grew up with under the shadow of the atomic bombs, and now there's so much talk of terrorism, the war, and sudden death. And one of the things I say is anytime you hear of anyone dying suddenly, it should reinforce the need to always be living suddenly. And I think that's something this generation does. You know, I enjoy watching them and their exuberance for every day. And they get made fun of a lot by a lot of our people, but I admire what they do, and I think they're going to get on their feet pretty good.
If you look at family experience, the silent generation and greatest generation were traditional nuclear family. The boomers, The family began to disintegrate, but they still had the Cleaver family for the most part, with mom staying home. As children, you were seen as special. Then Generation X is the first daycare generation. Latchkey kids was the term. Women were widely expected to work outside the home with dual-income families with Generation X. Completely different, changing from boomers to Gen X from a family setup. Then millennials have the merged families.
Yeah.
Divorcees marrying and having the coddling kids together. But also, speaking of coddling, they got a trophy for being in 8th place. So that kind of changed their outlook.
Did you see that the History Channel's remaking Roots? Yeah, I just saw that today. And it was funny because I was talking with a friend of mine, and one of his daughters was going through a blended family, multiple kids, different, it's all over there. And I thought, how would Alex Haley write Roots today? It would be easier to go back 200 years in time to dark Africa to research your roots than a lot of kids are going to have right now because the families are so diverse.
Another example of millennials I have to touch is I have all kinds of research I print up here. One line about millennials as far as their workplace view on time at work. Effective workers, but gone at 5 p.m. on the dot. They view work as a gig or something that fills the time between weekends.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this, and I talked to my son Alec, who's 19, so he's kind of a millennial, and he goes, I punch out at 3:58 at work. And I just started laughing. I'm thinking, well, whereas boomers and Gen Xers didn't even punch in and punch out.
Yeah.
We just worked until the work. And there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
And millennials also have a work ethic that no longer mandates the 10-hour days that we all feel guilty if we don't work 10 hours. It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today, Chris Rodell. We talked about generations because his second book, The Last Baby Boomer, The Story of the Ultimate Gold Pool, actually it might have been his fourth book. I might have messed up the stats, so he can correct that. Chris, go through your bio real quick on the books, and then also tell listeners how they can contact you if they'd like more information, or how they can buy your stuff.
You can get anything I do. It's all under the chrisrodell.com website, and that also has sample chapters for The Last Baby Boomer. It has links to videos of me speaking, and there's also websites for Use All the Crayons, and 8 Days to Amish is my blog if you're looking for free, cheap laughs. I had a friend of mine, he goes, everybody loves your blog so much. Put up a donation site. You'll be inundated with money. And this was about a year ago. Since then, I've made $102. He gave me $100. I went onto my wife's computer and put down $2 on PayPal just to see if it worked, and I had to pay her back. But I still love doing the blog, and I just think another thing I tell people in these talks is do something you love to do every day just because it's something you love to do every day. And for me, that's writing. If I spend about 2 hours a day writing, even if it's about something very silly, and it always is, I try to keep it very non-political. And it's just something I love to do. And people enjoy reading 8 Days to Amish. So if you want to do that, but I would prefer if you'd buy the books. Multiple copies.
Chris, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Should we do these last shots?
We got to do last shot. Ready, everybody? Here we go. Last shot.
Cheers.
To close out the show.
This was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Suze, here you go. All right. Here's my slurred speech. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Podcast. Visit boldsolutionsnobs.com for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Sign up for light reading. You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. It really is light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz, B-I-Z. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions.